Maya Robinson adjusted her uniform for the third time that morning, smoothing the crisp white apron over her black dress. At 42, she'd worked in enough wealthy households to know the drill. Be invisible, be efficient, and never let them see you're human. The Kim residence was her latest assignment, a sprawling modern mansion in the hills, all glass and sharp angles. She'd been hired to help with housekeeping and serving during the family's stay in Los Angeles while their son attended university. "You must be the new help," a voice called out dismissively. Maya turned to see a young man, perhaps 21, lounging in the doorway. Daniel Kim, she'd been briefed about him. Home for the summer, business major, reportedly difficult. "Yes, sir. Maya Robinson, pleased to meet you." He barely glanced at her, scrolling through his phone. "My room's on the second floor, east wing. I need it cleaned by noon. And I take my coffee at 8 a.m. sharp. Black, 2 sugars." Of course. The days developed a rhythm, though not a pleasant one. Daniel seemed to take particular pleasure in making Maya's work harder. Coffee spilled, accidentally, on freshly mopped floors. Clothes left in heaps when the hamper stood empty beside them. Meals sent back with vague complaints. "You missed a spot," became his favorite phrase, said with a smirk that made Maya's jaw tighten. One afternoon, as she was cleaning the study, Daniel barged in with friends. "Don't mind her," he said loudly. "She's practically part of the furniture." His friends laughed. Maya kept her eyes down, continuing to dust. But she noticed something that day, a photograph on the desk, partially hidden. An older Korean man, distinguished, standing beside a woman whose face was turned away from the camera. Something about it seemed familiar, though she couldn't place why. Everything changed the day Mr. Kim arrived. Maya was setting out afternoon tea when she heard the front door open. A commanding voice called out in Korean, then switched to English. "Daniel, where is everyone?" She turned, tray in hand, and froze. James Kim, though she'd known him as Junho 30 years ago, stood in the entryway, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. He'd aged, silver threading through his dark hair, but his eyes were the same. For a moment, time collapsed. They were 23 again, young and reckless, a summer romance that had burned bright before circumstances pulled them apart. "Maya," his voice was barely a whisper. The tray trembled in her hands. The weight of recognition. The crystal glasses on the tray clinked together as Maya's hands trembled. 27 years. It had been 27 years since she'd last seen those eyes, heard that voice speak her name with such tenderness. "Mr. Kim," she managed, her voice professionally neutral despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "Welcome home. Should I prepare tea in the sitting room?" James Junho stood paralyzed in the marble entryway, his briefcase still in hand, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and something deeper. Something that looked like pain. Yes, thank you." His formality felt like a knife. But what else could it be? They were different people now, living in different worlds. Maya carried the tray to the sitting room, her muscle memory taking over while her mind reeled. She could feel his eyes on her back as she walked, could sense the 1,000 unspoken questions hanging in the air between them. As she set down the tea service, her hands finally steady, she heard footsteps behind her. "Maya," his voice was low, private. "I didn't know you were. I had no idea you'd be here." She turned to face him, keeping the professional mask in place even as her heart hammered. "It's been a long time, Mr. Kim." "James," he said softly. "Please, when we're alone, it's still James." But before she could respond, Daniel's voice echoed from the stairway. "Dad, when did you get in?" Maya watched as James's expression shifted, becoming the businessman, the father. He stepped back from her, creating appropriate distance. "Just now," James called back. "Come have tea with me." Daniel bounded down the stairs with the careless energy of youth, then stopped short when he saw Maya standing there. "Oh, you're still here. Dad, I need to talk to you about getting a new housekeeper. This one is." "Daniel," James's voice cut through like steel. "That's enough, go wash up, we'll talk in a moment." Maya saw the confusion flash across Daniel's face. His father had never spoken to him that way before. She excused herself quickly, grateful for the escape, but she could feel James's eyes following her out of the room. Fragments of yesterday. That evening, Maya worked late in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The house was quiet, Daniel out with friends, and she'd assumed James was in his study. So when she heard footsteps behind her, she startled, nearly dropping the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. "I'm sorry," James said, raising his hands apologetically. "I didn't mean to frighten you." "It's fine." Maya set down the knife, wiping her hands on her apron. "Did you need something, Mr. Kim?" "I need to understand how this happened." He moved into the kitchen, keeping a respectful distance but close enough that she could smell his cologne, different from the cheap aftershave he'd worn in college, but somehow still familiar. "How you ended up here, working in my home, and I never knew." Maya turned back to her cutting board. It was easier to talk when she wasn't looking at him. "The agency sent me. They said the Kim family needed household help for the summer. It's a common enough name. I never imagined." "You were a teacher," James said quietly. "You were going to teach literature. You had that scholarship to graduate school." Her knife stilled against the cutting board. "Life happens, James. Plans change." "What happened?" The question hung between them, heavy with all the years of silence. "You left," she said simply. "You went back to Korea. Your father's business needed you. We both knew it was coming." "I wrote to you." His voice was rough. "For 6 months I wrote every week. You never responded." Maya's breath caught. She set down the knife and turned to face him, seeing the hurt still raw in his eyes after all these years. "I never received any letters." They stared at each other as understanding dawned. James's jaw clenched, and she saw his hands ball into fists at his sides. "My father," he said finally. "He must have intercepted them. He never approved of us. An American girl, not Korean, not from our social class." He shook his head bitterly. "I was young. I was stupid. I believed you'd moved on." "I thought you had forgotten me," Maya whispered. "I waited for months, and then I found out I was pregnant." The words fell like stones into still water. James staggered back as if she'd struck him. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Maya, is there?" "I lost the baby." The words came out flat, emotionless, though the grief had taken years to dull to this manageable ache. 3 months along, the stress, the doctor said, my body just let go. She watched James's face crumble, watched him grip the kitchen counter as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. "I'm sorry," he breathed. "God, Maya, I'm so sorry. If I had known, if I'd been there." "You couldn't have known, and it was a long time ago." "That's why you didn't go to graduate school." She nodded. "Medical bills, depression. By the time I pulled myself together, the scholarship was gone. I worked retail for a while, then catering, then housekeeping. It pays better than you'd think, working for wealthy families." "You shouldn't have had to go through that alone." "But I did." Maya turned back to her vegetables, needing something to do with her hands. "And I survived, and now, by some cosmic joke, here we are." James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "Does Daniel know about us?" "Of course not. How would he? I'm just the help." "The way he speaks to you." James's hands clenched again. "I heard him this afternoon. I've heard the stories from the other staff. Maya, if I had known." "He doesn't know any better," Maya said, surprised to find herself defending the young man who'd made her life difficult. "He's been raised in privilege. He sees the world a certain way." "That's not an excuse." "No," she agreed, "but it's an explanation." Later that night, after James had retreated to his study and Maya had finished in the kitchen, she found herself drawn to the photograph she'd noticed days earlier. The study door was ajar, the room empty, and she slipped inside. The photo sat in a silver frame, partially hidden behind a stack of business reports. Maya picked it up with trembling hands. It was from that summer. The summer they'd met, fallen in love, believed the world was theirs to conquer. She was wearing a yellow sundress, her hair longer than, wild in the California wind. James Junho had his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. Someone had taken the photo at the beach, she remembered. One of his friends, maybe. She'd never known a copy existed. I've carried that with me everywhere. Maya spun around. James stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. I'm sorry, she said quickly, setting the frame down. I shouldn't have. You're in every room of my life, Maya. He moved into the study, his eyes on the photograph. Even when I tried to move on, to build a new life, you were there. That picture. A book you recommended once that I kept on my shelf. The smell of jasmine because you loved jasmine tea. James. I married, he continued. 10 years after I left, a good woman from a good family, we had Daniel. We tried to make it work, but she knew. Somehow she always knew there was someone else. We divorced 5 years ago. Amicable, quiet. She's remarried now, happy, I think. Maya didn't know what to say. The enormity of it all, the lost years, the what-ifs, the parallel lives they'd lived, pressed down on her. Why did you keep the photograph? She asked finally. James looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw all the grief and regret and enduring love in his eyes. Because you were the only time in my life I ever chose what I wanted instead of what was expected. And even though it ended, even though I lost you, I never wanted to forget what that felt like. The next morning, everything changed again. Maya was cleaning the sitting room when she heard raised voices from James's study. Daniel's voice, sharp with confusion and anger. James's voice, measured but firm. You're defending her. Dad, she's just the maid. Don't you dare speak about her that way. What is wrong with you? Since when do you care about the help? Since always, and especially since she's someone who deserves your respect, not your contempt. There was a pause. Maya found herself frozen, dust cloth in hand, unable to move. There's something you're not telling me, Daniel said, his voice changing, becoming uncertain. What's going on? Who is she really? Sit down, Daniel. We need to talk. Maya's heart raced. She should leave, give them privacy, but her feet wouldn't move. Through the partially open door, she could see Daniel sink into a leather chair, his expression wary. James stood by the window, his back to his son, looking out at the manicured gardens. When I was your age, James began, I came to America for university. I was supposed to focus on my studies, prepare to take over the family business, follow the path my father had laid out for me. I know this story, Daniel said impatiently. You don't know all of it. James turned to face him. That summer before my senior year, I met someone. A young woman, brilliant, beautiful, full of life and dreams. She was going to be a teacher. She saw the world differently than anyone I'd ever met. Daniel's expression shifted, understanding beginning to dawn. We fell in love, James continued. Real love, the kind that changes you. I wanted to marry her. I was ready to give up everything, the business, my father's approval, my place in the family, just to be with her. What happened? My father found out. He ordered me home, threatened to cut me off completely, to disown me. I was young, scared. I thought I could convince him, thought if I went back temporarily, I could make him understand. James's voice grew heavy. I was wrong. He intercepted my letters to her, kept me in Korea on false pretenses. By the time I found a way back to America a year later, she was gone. No forwarding address, no way to find her. And you married Mom instead, Daniel said quietly. Years later, yes, I tried to move forward. Your mother deserved better than someone still in love with a ghost. We tried, Daniel. But some loves don't fade, they just become part of who you are. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, younger. The maid, Maya, she's. Her name is Maya Robinson, James said firmly. And yes, she's the woman I loved, the woman I never stopped loving. Through the doorway, Maya pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face. Does she know, Daniel asked, that you still, I mean all this time? We talked yesterday, for the first time in 27 years. Daniel stood abruptly, packing the room. This is insane. She's been here for 3 weeks. He stopped, and Maya saw the color drain from his face. Oh God, the way I've treated her. Dad, I didn't know. I thought she was just the help. James's voice was cold. And would that make it acceptable? Daniel, I'm ashamed of how you've behaved. Regardless of who Maya is to me, she deserved your respect as a human being doing an honest job. You're right. Daniel sank back into the chair, his head in his hands. You're absolutely right. I've been awful. I don't even know why. It's just, everyone does it. Treats the staff like they're not really there, like they don't matter. Then you need to be better than everyone else. There was a long silence. Finally, Daniel looked up at his father. What are you going to do? About Maya, I mean. Are you just going to let her keep working here like nothing happened? I don't know, James admitted. That's up to her. We're different people now, living different lives, but I won't dishonor what we had by treating her like a stranger, and neither will you. Maya finally found the strength to move, to slip away before either of them emerged and found her eavesdropping. But as she walked through the quiet halls of the Kim mansion, she felt the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future pressing down on her shoulders. Maya was polishing silver in the dining room that afternoon when Daniel found her. She heard his footsteps and braced herself, expecting more of his usual casual cruelty. Instead, when she looked up, she saw him standing in the doorway, his hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets, looking younger and more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. Ms. Robinson, he began, then stopped. Can we talk? Maya set down the silver-serving spoon she'd been polishing. Of course. He moved into the room but kept his distance, respecting her space in a way he never had before. His eyes wouldn't quite meet hers. I owe you an apology, he said, the words coming out in a rush. A big one, the way I've treated you since you got here. It was wrong, really wrong, and I don't have a good excuse for it. Maya remained silent, waiting. My dad told me, Daniel continued, about you and him, about what happened back then, but even if he hadn't, even if you were if you were anyone, I should have treated you better, with respect, like a person. He finally looked up at her, and she saw genuine remorse in his young face. I'm really sorry, Ms. Robinson. I know saying it doesn't undo any of it, but I'm sorry. For a moment, Maya just studied him. She saw James and his features, the shape of his eyes, the line of his jaw. But she also saw the boy he still was, raised in privilege but not beyond redemption. Thank you for the apology, she said finally. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. I want to do better, Daniel said. I want to be better, I don't really know how. Everyone I know treats staff the same way. It's just how things are. Then maybe it's time to change how things are. Maya picked up the silver spoon again, holding it up to the light to check for spots. Your father was raised with privilege too, but he learned to see people as people. Not their jobs, not their social class, just people. Because of you, Daniel said softly. Maya paused. Maybe partly, but mostly because he chose to. That's what growing up really means, Daniel, choosing to be better than what's expected of you.